Welcome back to part 17 of the Frogger mini-series, and in this video, we'll create the game timer that we can use for the death trigger as well as the score system. Let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. Alright, we'll open up our content drawer. We're going to create a new folder, so we'll right click, select new folder, and we'll title it widgets. Then inside that folder, we can right click, select user interface, and then choose widget blueprint. A little context box will open up. We'll choose user widget again, and then we'll give it a name. We'll call it WBP_HUD. This will be for our heads up display, which will have our game timer. So we'll double click to open that up, and we have to build out the design of the widget. So first thing we do is we add in a canvas panel. You just drag that out here. And the canvas panels are nice because you can align text elements and buttons to center, left, one of the corners, pretty much, whatever you want. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add a progress bar in, and we're going to go to anchors and select the bottom right corner. Then we're going to go back to anchors, hold control, and click that same corner. You'll notice it moves it to the outside there, but we want it on the inside of the canvas panel. So we'll go back to anchors, and this time we'll hold shift, and then we'll click the corner. And it kind of moves it on the inside there, which is perfect. We're going to add a X and Y offset. We can use maybe -130 by -100. And that looks pretty good. And the other thing too is I'll probably grab it and maybe expand it out. And that's good for right now. Let's go ahead and add a text element as well. We're going to anchor that in the corner. So we'll choose the corner first, then go back, hold control, then go back and hold shift. And then we're going to add a similar offset. We'll do -40 by -100. And then there's this size to content. We'll check that. And then we're going to change the text element to be time. I think that looks pretty good. So we'll go back to the progress bar. You see the percentage fill kind of goes like that. I think it would be fun if the bar counts down because it's a timer. So instead of going left to right, we'll go right to left, and then we'll just lower the value, kind of like that. Let's change the design a bit so we can go into style. For the background image, I don't want to use it, so I'm going to go to the tint, and I'm going to set the alpha to 0, so it's transparent. And then for the fill image, I just want to switch it from a box to maybe a rounded box. That way, when it's full, it kind of looks like that, and then as it goes down, it'll just sort of look like that. The last thing we'll want to do is we'll probably want to rename it because this is a variable, so we can maybe call this the time bar. And we can compile and save, and I think that's a good start for our heads up display. In the later videos we'll add more elements to it, but just for this one we'll keep it simple. Now once we have the design set up, we want to go to the graph editor so we can actually add some code. The code's pretty simple. We're not going to be working in pre-construction or tick, but under event construct we want to take that time bar and we want to set that percent. So set percent, they have a function for the progress bar. And then we want to set it to 100%, which in this case is a value of 1, because in the designer view you'll notice our percent goes from 0 to 1. And that's going to be important later, so I'm calling it out now. So that'll set it back to 100% when the game starts. And then we want to add a custom event to update that timer, or that time bar. And we want to basically do the same thing, but we need some way to pass in some new percentage value, some new value between 0 and 1. If we select the custom event, under the details panel there's an input. We can hit the plus sign and add a new input we'll just call time. And we know the data type has to be float because it's green, so we'll choose float. And then we can just pass time into the new percent value. So basically what this is saying is when you call this event, wherever it's being called from, whether it's the level blueprint, the player blueprint, or the game manager, wherever, it's going to ask for some float value to be passed in when the function gets called. So we'll be passing that value in from somewhere else. Hopefully that made sense, but that is basically the widget completed. Now we need to figure out where to add the widget. You can do this in a number of different ways. We could add it on the player blueprint, which does make a lot of sense. I think for this prototype, we'll add it in the game manager, since the game manager is going to be doing the code for the time anyways. And then we can just reference it to the player blueprint, because the player already cast to the game manager anyways. So what we'll do is we'll go into the blueprints. Let's open up the game manager. And let's find, I think the event begin play is good. I don't think we're using tick, so we'll delete that. So on begin play, which runs when the game starts, we can create a widget. The widget we want to create is the HUD widget. And then it's going to be very helpful if we promote this to a variable. So we can right click, promote to variable, and we'll call it HUD reference. And then that basically creates the widget and stores it as a value so we can call it later. Now another thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a, remember in the HUD widget we are basically passing in that time value. So we need a way to calculate and store those time values. So let's create a variable on the game manager called maybe total time. And it is of course going to be a float. And let's add another variable called time remaining. You may be asking, why do we need two variables to store time? It has to do with the fact that the widget needs a value between 0 and 1. So we need some way to scale whatever value we're using, basically between 0 and 1. So that's basically why we're using two variables here. So for our total time, just as an example, we'll give the player 10 seconds to beat the level. So now we need to figure out how to pass that total time to time remaining. Now we could do it in begin play, but I think it makes a lot of sense to create a custom event for it, because if you think about it, in the original game, when the frog has a time bar to make it across the map, and when they do, the player resets, and then that time bar also has to reset as well, and then they kind of do it again. So we need some way to be able to do this repeatedly. So we'll add a custom event called reset timer. And it's going to be very simple. We can just take the time remaining and hold Alt, drag it in, so it's a setter. And then we can just take the total time and pass it into the time remaining. So when the game starts, when the event begin play, we can call the reset timer. And that'll work perfectly fine. Calls this, it'll basically set time remaining to be the starting total time, which in this case is 10 seconds. So now that we have time remaining and total time, we can then call a function. So we can basically create a timer. So we'll do set timer by function name. So we can create some function and we can tell it to run every 1 second, and we can put it on loop. So basically this function will do something every 1 second, and we can effectively make it a timer. But we need to figure out which function to write. So on the left-hand side under functions, we'll hit the little plus sign, and we will call this maybe update time. And then we need another function called timeout. So obviously this one is going to be responsible for updating the time, and this one's going to be responsible for doing something when the player runs out of time. Likely we're going to be calling the death trigger, death event. So we'll go back to the event graph, and under the function name, we'll call update time every 1 second. And that's perfect. So now let's go ahead and write this function name. So at the top in the tabs, we'll click on update time, and then you can see it's blank right now, but this is going to be where we write basically the code. So we can take our time remaining, and we can pull off that and do a minus minus to choose a decrement. And what this does is it lowers your variable by 1 and then stores it. So it's like a setter and a getter all in one, so it's nice and compact. And then once we do that, we can then basically take our HUD reference and do a getter and call that custom event we made on the HUD called update time bar. But we can't just pass this in here, because remember, time remaining is going to be 10 seconds. Well, in this case, it would be 9 seconds because it ran once. And that value has to be between 0 and 1. And this is why we needed the 2 variables. So the way we can do that is we can take the time remaining, and you can hold control and drag out total time, so we can get 2 getters. So we'll take time remaining and we will divide that against total time, and that'll give us some value between 0 and 1. And what we can also do, just to be safe, is we can pull that into a clamp. We'll do clamp float. And the minimum value is going to be 0. Now obviously the variable is going to go negative, right? So it's going to, because it's minusing 1 every single time. But we don't want to pass a negative value to the heads up display because it only handles between 0 and 1. So we'll say the min is 0 and the max will be the total time, because it'll never be higher than the total time and it'll never be lower than 0. We'll pass that in there. And this is basically complete code for the updating the time widget. So this will work correctly. But there is another thing we'll want to do. We want to pull off into a branch node. And then for the branch, we'll want to take the time remaining and check if it is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, then we want to call the timeout function. So basically the player ran out of time, now they need to hit the penalty. So let's take a look at the timeout function. This one's going to be very simple. All we have to do is just cast to the player class, which we called BP player, and then we can pull off the object field. If you remember, when we created the BP player, we had to choose a class to inherit from. Remember, we had actor, pawn, character. There's a few things you choose from. In this case, we chose character. So we would want to get player character, because this class inherits from that. And we can say player 0 is the first player. And then as that player, we can now access all the custom events on that player. And then if you remember, let's just go ahead and open it up here, BP player. We had a custom event called death. What death does is it decrements a life, it moves the camera, and if the player has lives left, it will respawn the player, which is perfect. So we can go over here and basically just call that death function. And that's the entirety of the timeout code, because that's really all you need, right? So this is all good. Everything is correct here, but you'll notice when we play the game, I don't have a HUD. So what's going on? Well, it's simple. We created the HUD widget on the game manager. Player is not part of the game manager, so it doesn't see that. So we need to go to the BP player blueprint. And if you remember, on the begin play, we are casting to the game manager and storing it as a reference. Well, what's nice is since we're already doing that, we can pull off the game manager. We can get that HUD reference because we have access to it. And then with that HUD reference, we can pull off that and just simply add to our player viewport. And just like that, we have a working HUD. And you can see it is updating, it's going down, the little bar. Remember, it's 10 seconds, minus is 1 second every time, and then basically goes to 0, calls the death event. Now there's going to be a problem here. You'll notice that I'm instantly dying, and you can probably have a think as to why that's happening. And then there's the game over state. We're lowering the heads-up display time bar to 0, but we're never resetting it. We created a function or a custom event to reset the timer, but we never actually do it. So we got to think where's the best place to actually do that on. And on the BP player class, there's a few different areas you could do it on, but I think on the spawn and swap, right before the destroy actor, right after the possess, I think is the best spot. So we can get our game manager reference and call that reset timer. Basically right, because this gives control back to the player, and then we basically start the timer back up. It'll give them the ability to move. So that way it doesn't feel like we're resetting the timer too early and the timer's counting down before they can even move, because that doesn't feel too great. Then we compile and save. And now if we die here, let the timer reach 0, it should do the camera work, respawn the player, and then repossess the player, and then reset the timer. So then I can actually move around and go again. But 10 seconds isn't really long enough for the player, so we should go back to the total time. Set that to, I don't know, like 120, maybe 2 minutes. Compile, save. That way the bar doesn't go down as quickly and the player has a chance to make it across the map. Now what's nice about this is even though the bar is going down, and I know I said we were going to do the death event for the water, but I'm glad we didn't yet, because it makes this a little bit easier. On the win state, because we already set up the code, it'll reset the player, it won't remove lives, and it'll reset the timer. So that's already inherently working just because of the logic we have set up, which is kind of nice. Now there's a problem with the timer. Depending on the scenario, you could have it where the player enters in a death state, and as the player's spawning, the HUD widget's going to be going down, so you might get a small window where they could technically die twice. So I think to fix that, when we call the death state, so under timeout we have death right here, we should also probably pause the timer. So we can basically, if we go back here, we can store the timer as a variable. So we can promote this and we'll call this the game timer reference. And then compile and save. And then actually we can probably just create a custom event for it as well. So we'll just do this on the fly. So we'll do add custom event and we'll do stop timer. And then we'll do another custom event, start timer. And then we can basically just take our timer reference and then we can say pause timer by handle. And we'll select this, Control D to duplicate, and then we can unpause timer by handle. And then compile and save. So when we initially do the timeout, we call the death state. So what we could do here, which is just casting the player and calling death. So we could probably just get our game timer. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I can just call the stop timer. So basically when they run out of time, stop the timer. We no longer need to count and lower the bar because they're dead. And then on the player, when we reset the timer, we can probably call the start timer function here. And then honestly, we should also probably call it on the death as well. So right here, game manager reference, we should pull off this and do a stop timer as well. Add in some last minute code here. And I think this is more visible if we go back to the game manager. Let's actually set that to a lower value, like 10 seconds, because I think it is easier to see. So basically you start the game and you're about to run out of time, and then you die. It should pause the timer, which it does, and then it resets it and then re-kicks it off. Because there's a situation where you could die with very little time remaining, and the timer would still be counting down before the player respawns and it resets. So you could technically die twice. So that's basically all that's accounting for. But alright, good people, I think we'll cut it here, but in the next one, we'll set up the logic for the score system, and I promise we will set up the death trigger for the river. But as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.